Rewind 93.9 WYEC, Mid-Morning in the Cities. I'm Sean Patrick, and I'm excited to be joined by author Joshua Becker. The book is called The More of Less. Joshua, thank you for joining us.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This is a pretty extraordinary book. Everybody has more stuff than they know what to do with, and your book is talking about minimalism, about taking your life down to the bare essentials, something that you and your wife have done.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable when we can see it in our own lives, and we can see it as a society. The average American home has tripled in size in the last 50 years. The average American home has 300,000 items inside of it, and we rent, and 10% of us rent off-site storage to house the things that we can't fit in our homes that are bigger than they've ever been.
Is it an emotional thing? Like we're just emotionally attached to these things, even without really knowing it?
I think that we are just fed this lie that we are going to be happy with more so many times from so many places that we start to believe it without even realizing that we bought into it. We see on average 5,000 advertisements every single day, and when you think about it, every single one of them tells us that our life will be better, we'll be happier, we'll be more fulfilled if we buy and keep whatever they're selling. And even though we know possessions aren't actually making us happier, we're just told so many times that we'll be happier with more that we hold on to it thinking that it's going to contribute to our happiness. In reality, it's taking us away from happiness.
Author Joshua Becker is our guest today on Mid-Morning in the Cities. We're talking about his book on becoming a minimalist. It's essentially figuring out what is necessary for your life. The More of Less is what the book is called. Joshua Becker is our guest, and we'll continue this conversation after this. Mid-Morning in the Cities is presented by Curbs Davenport on Rewind 93.9. Author Joshua Becker is our guest today on Mid-Morning in the Cities. It's an unusual topic. It's about becoming a minimalist. His book is called The More of Less, and it's about his journey to becoming a minimalist and finding the things that are necessary for your life. And Josh, what was this process like for you personally when you discovered, when you were on your way to becoming a minimalist, from a personal perspective? How did this? What was the biggest change for you?
Well, a lot of everything is probably the best way to say it. You look in our closet, and I'm like, there's far more clothes in here than I need. Look in my garage, and there's just boxes of things that aren't used. My basement was full of stuff that wasn't being used. My cabinets in my kitchen weren't closing, and the closets were too full. Towels that I need, right? Like everything. It's like we bought in this mindset that if having a couple of something is nice, then having as much as possible as that thing is even better. And what it does is it slowly becomes a burden, right? I mean, when you think about all the time that goes into caring for all of our stuff and cleaning it and organizing it and shopping for it or earning the money to buy it and all the energy we waste taking care of it, all the money that is spent on those things, in reality there's this interesting life of freedom and I think focusing on the important things, once we're able to remove all those time and energy sucks from our lives.
Author Joshua Becker is our guest today on Mid-Morning in the Cities, and we're talking about his book about becoming a minimalist. It's called The More of Less, Finding the Life You Want Under Everything That You Own. And it's interesting. There's an entire there are industries built on us just buying things that we maybe not need. You mentioned storage facilities, or even when it comes to moving companies, when you have to finally move into a new place, you suddenly realize just how much stuff you have, and you're going to need help to move it.
Very interesting. You actually find two industries that continue to grow and grow, right? The storage facility industry. The container store, interesting, has grown by 20% every year since the year 2000. And this is a whole store built on buying things to store the things that we have too much of. And yet, you also find industries like the National Association of Professional Organizers, the National Association of Senior Move Managers, that these industries continue to grow and grow as well. It's like we're accumulating more and more stuff, and then we think the solution is just to find people that can help us organize it better, as opposed to, I think, really the simpler solution of How do I get rid of all this stuff that I don't need and see what happens?
And it's popular culture too. When you look at reality television, you have shows like Hoarders that it may show the ugly side of accumulating too much, but it's still on television, and there are people who are going to want to mimic that to get maybe on TV or find some sort of fame for themselves. And then you have shows like Storage Wars where people simply forget that they even have this stuff, and it ends up being sold to somebody else.
Isn't it just a fascinating commentary on what our society looks like and how we have begun to define happiness in terms of possessions and money? And yet I think if you sit across a table from somebody and you ask them, hey, deep down, what do you most want out of life? Rare is the person who says, my greatest goal in life is to own as much as possible, right? We talk about friends and we talk about family, we talk about faith, we talk about having an influence and making a difference, that those are the things that we actually want to do with our lives, and the possessions have just become the great distraction that are keeping us from that.
Author Joshua Becker, our guest today on Mid-Morning in the Cities. We're talking about becoming a minimalist and his new book, The More of Less. And we'll continue this conversation and wrap things up next. Mid-Morning in the Cities is presented by Curves Davenport on Rewind 93.9. We're in our final moments here with author Joshua Becker talking about his new book, The More of Less. It's about becoming a minimalist. And Josh, in our final moments here, what do you want people to know the most about this book?
Well, I think I want people to know that the message of the book is pretty simple. It's a very important one. The message of the book is that our lives are just too valuable to waste chasing and accumulating possessions, and that there are greater pursuits available to us. The book is very motivational and inspirational in making that case, but it's also quite practical. There's some sections in there talking about how do you get started and how do you begin applying these principles to the things that you own, and also to your relationships and to your schedule. And it's I really like the book. I wrote it, but people seem to like it, so that's good.
I honestly think this is going to change people's lives. There are people who are just buried under their things, and they need to read something like that. Well, they need to read this book so they can really figure out get to the heart of what they truly need.
I think it's a great book, regardless of your stage of life. Whether if you're young or if you're older, if you're in the middle, I think it has something for everyone.
Well, Joshua Becker, thank you for your time, and thank you for your book.
Yeah, my pleasure.
That's author Joshua Becker. If you missed any part of this interview about his new book, The More of Less, and about becoming a minimalist, you'll be able to catch it online in a few moments in our Mid-Morning in the Cities podcast at QuadCityDailyNews.com. QuadCityDailyNews.com is powered by local radio. Mid-Morning in the Cities is presented by Curves Davenport on Rewind 93.9.